One of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit is underway with the highest number of African heads of state gathering in Beijing in China. President Cyril Ramaphosa has addressed the forum and thanked President Xi Jinping for China's support for Africa's development as a form of a genuine friendship based on common developmental goals. Our business editor, Xolani Mbanjwa, is now joining us from Beijing. Xolani, good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. So seeing that a number of heads of state from the African continent attending this forum, which has been billed the biggest gathering of African heads of state, tell us, who are those heads of state who are there?
Good morning, Aldrin. Indeed, there are a lot of heads of state here. Really, when it comes to this particular gathering, you are absolutely right. It is the biggest gathering, just like the 2018 gathering. It is the biggest gathering of African heads of state outside of Africa. It even rivals and the United Nations gathering, and that pales in comparison to what the African heads of state treat and how they treat this relationship with China. President Xi Jinping is here at the convention center and in Beijing, and he has addressed and he sounded genuine, just as he has sounded on the previous 9 occasions of the summits that started in 2000 about the relationship being based on trust and fairness and mutual respect. It is a very important undertaking that there is then and has always been that skepticism about what China wants from Africa and whether China wants to exploit Africa for its natural resources. President Cyril Ramaphosa was the 3rd president to address this morning after Xi Jinping and the co-chair of FOCAC, that is the newly elected president of Senegal, one of the youngest presidents in the continent right now. And when we talk about who is here, at least 35 African heads of state I have counted, and I'm still counting. That is the Comoros, that is Malawi, Mali, even Kenya. Williams Ruto is actually here with all the problems that he's facing at home, which are likening to a revolution. He decided to come here because this relationship is very important. We've seen some of the other Nigerian president, the president of Mauritania, Egypt, many others. There are fewer African presidents who are not here for very valid reasons than those who are here. And we've seen also ministers, at least 2,000 ministers from all these countries coming here to say that they need to deepen the relationship and remove any skepticism that citizens from Africa and citizens from China may have about what their heads of state actually want when it comes to these talks and these relationships, and whether they are going to be the ones who actually ultimately benefit.
I think the other issue that has been raised before is the fear that has been expressed by some Africans that Africa could be colonized again, and this time by China. But I wonder the level of discussion that is taking place and what is at the core of it.
You are absolutely right. I asked that question to Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Park Stow about South Africans in particular feeling like that there is a feeling really that is real that when Chinese companies come to South Africa, some of them prefer bringing Chinese construction workers, and there's a feeling that they never leave. He said that's not the case. It is a case of actually South Africa should be learning to give and take, and South Africa should make sure that when you are looking for funding for development of infrastructure, you must be able to accept people for longer than 6 months, because in the infrastructure development, when companies from China come to South Africa, there are certain skills that we don't have in abundance, and we need to change our mindset in how we relate to the Chinese and our feelings as South Africans when it comes to that. But the three biggest issues that have come out of here, which many believe are going to be addressed, number one is the high import tariffs. When African goods, just like South Africa, are brought into China, the tariffs are too high, which makes South African goods unattractive to the locals and expensive in that way. And the second one is the visa issues by the Chinese when it comes to them coming to Africa. South Africa is another case in point when it comes to that. It must actually be relaxed. For that is the frustration of Chinese investors who, when they want to bring their bags of money, they do want to have one or two people to come and manage some of the infrastructure project to see them through, because these are their investments as well. And the third one is the balancing of those trade relations. We saw in South Africa, there is last year, the trade imbalance, that deficit was at 177 billion rands last year. South Africa buying 227 billion rands worth of goods from China, and 440 billion rands rather, and China only buying 227 billion rands, and that deficit being a point of contention, something that the Chinese have undertaken to correct.
Thank you so much, Xolani Mbanjwa. They're joining us from Beijing, where the FOCAC summit is underway.